Hey, good morning. Welcome back to another episode of Things You Probably Shouldn't Do to Your Computer. This is part two, I think. Yeah, part two of the ridiculous cartridge. And we're adding things. I'm going to spare you the boring details of the soldering and whatever. I shot a bunch of video as I was putting this together, but it's really long and boring, so we're moving on. Here's the cliff notes. Here's what changed. There is now a 3-pin jumper here, and the middle pin is what drives the LS139 as far as a base address selection for the decoder. The top pin is IO1DE00 and the bottom one is IO2DF00. So without a modified computer, with just a regular stock machine, you can short the jumper one side or the other and use this cart on either of those address ranges. And then if you just pull the cap off and take another address range from like an internal decoder like we had in the last video, you could drive it off whatever range you want. So I thought that was a handy little feature to have. And then we have added a socket and a couple little extra pins here. And that is for this little guy, the SidKick Pico. We are going to add sound to this. So this is turn it into like an ISA sound card of PCs in the 80s and 90s, where you had game ports and sound and whatever all in one shot. So this is the Pico. We looked at that previously, or check out the other content creators stuff that I linked. They do a much better job going into the details on this, but yeah, we have the extra 2 pins on the end here. Those are extra addresses that you could run address 5 and 8 to, or you can just use a second pin with an external chip select signal, which we just happen to have on the LS139 right next to it. So that's how we're going to wire it. And that, I think, brings us up to speed for the top side of the board. On the bottom side, we've made additions, obviously, wired in the socket, and some changes. So the one change that I want to mention before anything else is we changed the address lines going to the 139 decoder. I did have it breaking out 64-byte blocks out of each page, but I dropped that down to 32 to be better in line with how SIDs currently work, right? The way multi-SID boards that are out there work, they run on 32-byte blocks. So instead of 6 and what do we have before? 7 and 8. Now we have 6 and 7 addresses, 6 and 7 running over to the 139. And then the SID socket, we have left off a few things that are not needed for these replacement type chips. So you can't run a real SID in this socket, but you can run any of the replacements like this thing, or the FPGA SID, or ARM2 SID, or ARM SID, or whatever should all work in here is what I'm thinking. So these first 4 pins are where you would have the filter caps hooked up to a real SID, which we probably don't need, won't ever need. This pin up here is VDD, the 9 volt or 12 volt, depending on your SID type. Don't need that for any of the replacements. This is audio in and audio out. We're going to do different things to get audio out of this chip. And then these 2 are the potentiometers that would go for mouse or paddles or any of that. Maybe one day we'll hook those up to something, but for now we don't need them. Then, it's just data bus, address bus. This is 5-volt power, and clock and read write over here, and that's pretty much it. So, oh yeah, and a chip select signal. That's the important one. This little black one in here, which you probably can't see, it's buried. That's the chip select signal coming from the second leg of the 139. So that'll be address 20. Might be 420 or, it's 20, right? Depending on what your base is, right? So if you're going to run, DE00 jumper position on top, then it would be DE20 is going to drive the chip. So, yeah. Anyway, that's enough rambling. That's what we've done so far. I guess we will get this thing configured and then plugged into the board. That's one thing to note as well. With the SidKick Pico's built-in config tool, once you change it from D400 base, if you're addressing this chip in some weird way like we are, that built-in config tool is not going to work anymore. I'm trying to figure out a way to fix that. but that's a story for another video, I think, at this point. So for now, we're just going to pop it in a different machine, config the chip, and then we can put it on our board. So stand by, let me get that all set up and going. Okay, for today's playtime, we're using the Evo because this is the SID monster. I love this machine. The audio is phenomenal on it. It's kind of sacrilegious that we're going to put a microcontroller, digitally whatever kind of thing, base SID in the expansion port when we have like real SIDs and the new tube amplifier inside the thing. But hey, a little bit from every world should keep everybody happy, right? So anyway, let's open the config tool. Maybe. There we go. All right. So this is how we're going to have them set up. 6581 and 8580 for a little bit of diversity. We'll enable DigiBoost. We got the volume sliders about halfway. The address line is set for external chip select. And panning I have hard left and right. So we'll be able to tell exactly what each channel is doing, you know, in the event we run into problems. We probably will at some point. And then I've got this cute little mixer thing, so that I have each SID run into one channel. These are stereo, but we're not doing that. We're running basically mono, right? So we have, you know, left, right. SID 1 is on a left channel, SID 2 is on a right channel, SID 3 is on left, SID 4 is on right, you know? So we get a little bit of stereophonic kind of action. So, all right, that's that. One more look at the config, and we will assemble cart and figure out what we're going to do to poke and play with it. All right, I thought I'd take a quick second to just recap pins that we did things with, right? The ones in red are not wired, the ones in green are. So at least we didn't have to wire up all 28 of these things because it's getting pretty rat's nesty on the bottom side of that cartridge. Anyway, no caps, reset clock, read write, chip select is the only special one really. That's coming from the LS139. Everything else is just getting wired through to the cartridge slot connector. Address lines, ground obviously, the data bus. The potentiometers are not hooked up, but maybe we can do something creative with those one day. So, you know, maybe we'll wire them into something. VCC is our 5 volt coming in, and then audio in and out is not hooked up to anything because we're using the DAC board, and VDD is not hooked up because we don't need the higher DC voltage, the +9 or +12. It'd be really hard to get it out there anyway. So anyway, that's how we're wired. Now to beat this thing up a little bit, I found this neat demo that came pre-compiled with the source, so you can play around with it. And this is one of the very few quad SID things I found out there, but it's very easy to set your addresses that you want to actually route the different tracks to. Here's all the code that somebody a lot smarter than me wrote, and that somebody is Vincenzo and the Singular crew. Very cool thing they put out here, being able to, you know, put their source out there like that. I thought was a really nice thing for those guys to do to help people like me that don't have any idea what the hell they're doing with machine language and whatever. So I just added a little bit here to make note of what I did, but these are the guys that wrote this. I do not take credit for this at all. I just changed a few addresses and added a comment. So there you go. And it's as easy as running this command here to assemble it, and you get an output file. I named it file.crap. So I'm going to compile this in a couple of different ways with a few different combinations of addresses, so I have some things to test with when I go doing silly things. And I will dump this onto the, I guess the SD to IEC would be the easiest thing to use, and we'll get playing with it. Okay, and here's our test bench. We're set up and ready to go, I think. I made a couple of flavors of this, so we're going to be using the first one because we're set up right now with the DF address space going to our little Pico thing on the cart board there. We have other ones here if we want to play with other stuff later, but yeah, I guess that's it. We're running to the mixer. The mixer is all set up level-wise, and I will unmute the direct capture. Where did I leave that? There, and we'll let this thing rip for a second. All right. It works, address-wise, all that other stuff. It sounds decent enough, but we're comparing two vastly different things here from an audio standpoint now. We have a little microcontroller that's doing little microcontroller digital things, and the cheapest DAC board they had on AliExpress versus real SIDs and a tube amplifier. So we're kind of, apples and hand grenades here. All that to say, I can hear some differences. So I'm gonna back out these two channels, and we're gonna listen to the middle bit here a little bit. And on would be the left channel would be the Pico, and the right channel will be a real SID. And take a close listen to it. I don't want to taint anybody, so I won't say what I think I'm hearing. I'll just pull it back up, let you listen for a second, then I'll ramble some more. Yeah, right there, you can hear how distorted the highs are coming out of the SidKick. There's an artifact or two here and there that just sounds like a chirp, instead of the tone it's supposed to be. So, look, I don't want to disparage that project at all. I think what Frenetic did, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is absolutely phenomenal with this very limited microcontroller. But it's just not a real SID, is what it is. So, I think we're going to change gears a little bit. We know the board works. We know everything's doing what it's supposed to. I'm going to swap out the Pico for an ARM2 SID. One, because I want to hear the difference in quality. And two, we can get FM synth, which would be pretty slick too. So hang on. We're going to go back into build mode here. I'm going to pop the ARM to SID on this thing and see how we... And here's the finished product. I think it actually looks pretty good from the top side of the board. Mind you, there's colorful little bodgy wires there, but hey, gotta do what you gotta do. So, what did we do? It's pretty much wired up just like you would put an ARM2 SID inside of a computer. The chip select line for here, the additional I/O line, is wired to DF, and I moved the primary select to DE just to make math easier, because I'm going crazy calculating hex offsets in my head anymore. So DE is going to control SID 1 and DF is going to control SID 2. And there's a bit of a reason for that. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but if we're going to use FM synth mode, the entire page, the entire 256 bytes is required for the ARM to SID, or if you're going to use like a real chip, you know, a real Yamaha OPL chip, you need the entire 256 bytes of address space. So all that to say, the SID is going to be addressed as DE and DF. 3 SID mode won't work as it is now because we only have a 32 byte block of memory assigned for the primary chip select. If we want to move that to 64 bytes, we could get a SID at DE00 and a SID at DE20. I don't know that that's necessary, though. If I need a 5th SID, I'll move that wire, but that wire is buried right about in there somewhere, and I don't feel like digging it out. So we're just going to go with 2 SIDs or 1 SID plus FM synth. Being that I'm plugging this into a computer with 2 real SIDs, I think that's more than enough for now. And the 2 caps up top here are decoupling caps. They're in line with the audio lines going to the jack there. Hopefully that focuses all right. So yeah, I think this thing ought to work. So I'm going to compile another copy of our 4SID demo and get the config program loaded up and all that other good stuff. Make sure the thing is set right, and we'll give it a whirl. We'll record some audio. All right, we're all installed, got some software loaded, and I have reworked the capture a little bit, so hopefully the captured video doesn't look as ass-tastic as it used to. Oh, what am I doing? How do I work this thing? That's how you work this thing. Alright, so ARM to SID configurator finds everything just fine. It knows what addresses it's on. So we'll just pick the first SID, and I don't think we care much about filters right now, but extra features. I turned this off, otherwise it would decide which channel to send audio out of, and well, that just makes things hard to understand what's going on when you're working on problems. So, what next? Digifix, I don't think we care about right now, and the address mapping is probably the only other important thing. And it's as easy as that. SID left. It thinks it's D400 because that's, you know, kind of default for the chip select on the main SID on the main chip. So we just set that to SID left, but as we saw, it was detected at DE100 as it booted, and then DF100 for the other one. If we want to play with SFX, it's just a matter of changing emulation mode to SFX, and it will be on DF100 instead of the second SID. Like I said, we're not messing with any more than 2 SIDs right now. If we want to get into 3 SID mode, I think that's going to be a story for another day because I don't feel like chasing that wire. So we'll bail out of here and let's just listen to it, huh? So we're going to load up the DEDF flavor and away we go. Wow, I think that sounds a ton better. I'm going to pull off the real SIDs, and we'll just listen to the ARM2 SID here for a moment and see if we think it's any better or any worse than the Pico. Yeah, I think that sounds much better. No distortion, no artifacts, no nothing. Here, I'll let it run for another minute or so. Alright, I think that's enough for now. And just for reference, in case I hadn't mentioned it, this is a 6581 R4AR, a 6582, very closely related to the 8580, and of course the ARM to SID. So, I think that's it. I'll kind of wrap this here. We'll figure out what more we're going to bolt onto this cartridge, and we'll do some more videos of ridiculous pain in the ass soldering. So, take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.